Thomas Cranmer put together the Book of Common Prayer, one of his principal concerns was to ensure that the prayer of the church belonged to all the people and not just to religious professionals like clergy and monks and nuns. One of the ways Thomas Cranmer did this was to take a very complicated life of prayer that was lived out by the monastics, by monks and nuns, with 7 or more times of prayer during the day. Thomas Cranmer simplified that and created just 2 offices or services of prayer, morning prayer and evening prayer, with the hope that everyone could join together and say morning prayer and evening prayer. In the Book of Common Prayer, the daily office is found near the front of the book. So we have the daily office in both Rite 1 traditional language and Rite 2 contemporary language. Rite 1 is closer to the language that Thomas Cranmer himself created, and much of Rite 1 consists of prayers written by Thomas Cranmer himself. This is from a time when the English language was at its apex. It's the language of Shakespeare. It's beautiful language of these and thous. But sometimes that language is poetic and maybe a little removed from our knowledge of vocabulary. So Rite 2 takes those ancient prayers and translates them a little into somewhat more contemporary language. Instead of saying thee and thou, we say you and yours. Praying the daily office regularly steeps us in Scripture and in prayer. And in particular, if you say morning and evening prayer regularly for 2 years, you will, at the end of 2 years, have read and prayed your way through almost the entire Bible. And depending on which option you choose, you may make your way through all 150 Psalms every month. It's a beautiful and holy way to make our way through the Bible, to cover lots of ground of Scripture. And even the words and the prayers of the office themselves come from the Psalms, come from Scripture. The entire office of morning and evening prayer is Scripture through and through. A service of morning or evening prayer consists of several parts. We begin with some psalms, and as I said, we make it through quite a few psalms over the course of a month. And then there are lessons from Scripture, from the New Testament and from the Old Testament, and we respond to each of those lessons with something called a canticle, which is a song or a poem from Holy Scripture. We say the Creed, the Apostles' Creed, in morning and evening prayer, reminding ourselves day in and day out of the faith that we've inherited and that we are meant to pass on. And then there are other prayers that we say for the needs of the whole world and for the church and for ourselves. This is morning prayer and evening prayer. You can say them alone, or some churches offer morning and evening prayer every day, and you can join with other people. But it's important to know that in the view of the church and in the tradition of the church, we never pray the daily office alone, because I know that whenever I'm saying morning prayer, somebody else somewhere in the world is saying those prayers at that time. So whenever we say morning prayer, whether we're with a group or whether we're by ourselves, we're joining in the global and timeless prayer of the church. Now, the daily office can get a little complicated with all the options and so forth. So if you haven't said the daily office and you're not sure where to start, the prayer book offers a wonderful place to begin called Daily Devotions for Individuals and Families. These are found on page 136 of the Book of Common Prayer. They're prayers for morning, prayers for noontime, prayers for evening, and prayers for bedtime that are only 1 page long. And they're meant to be used by individuals or families at home. And they're short enough that if you were to say them regularly, you would pretty quickly have them memorized. And it's a way that the prayer book offers to introduce us into this habit of daily prayer as we grow into the full habit of saying morning and evening prayer day in and day out.